So the first thing that I had to adjust to after moving to Medellin Colombia from London, UK, was that here you wear sandals indoors. They call them chanclitas because of the geography of Medellin, because it's a big bowl, because the pollution levels here are worse than they are in London. You have to wear sandals indoors because basically the floor gets dirty. Even if you were to clean the floor in your apartment every single day, or sometimes even twice a day, I've heard stories about that, your feet would still be filthy at the end of the day, and so you need to wear sandals when you're walking around your apartment here in Medellin, Colombia. Now I know that's not the same for every single city here in Colombia, but it's definitely a thing in here in Medellin, and I had to get used to this. The first few weeks I was here, I wasn't wearing chanclitas indoors, and I just realized the bottom of my feet were getting absolutely filthy, so I basically had to buy a pair of sandals, wear them indoors, clean them often, and basically clean the floor in my apartment quite often because it just gets dirty. All the cars are old, the buses, the motorbikes, the pollution build up. So that's the first thing. In my flat in London, I would never dream about wearing chanclitas indoors. I would just walk around barefoot in my apartment the whole time, and even though I cleaned the floor of my flat once a week, my feet would never get dirty and it was absolutely fine. So that was one of the first biggest culture shocks here, is that people wear chanclitas indoors. Now the second point, you just don't get bread or toast here in Medellin. Everything is with arepa. Basically arepas replace bread and toast, and because I'm a Brit, as I grew up in the UK, I love toast with eggs, beans on toast, all of that good stuff, and so I've had to adjust with having arepa with everything. And honestly, I do miss toast a little bit. It's one of the home comforts I look forward to having when I go back to the UK. And it's not that you can't buy bread here, it's not like you can't have toast, but if you were to go into a typical restaurant or a typical cafe for breakfast, eggs on toast just won't be an option. They won't have toast on the menu unless it's at maybe a fancy kind of international restaurant, and they'll just have arepa. And I personally love arepa. They have different types of it. You can get arepa de choclo, normal arepa con maíz, so you can get lots of different types of arepa, which make it quite interesting. But I have read online that some foreigners do find arepa quite boring, and so if you are a really big bread and toast person and you basically couldn't live without it, I'm not really sure that's a real thing, then you would struggle living here in Medellin because they just don't really have it that often. Apartments don't have toasters, you just don't really see toast out eaten very often. And so yeah, but this is a Paisa thing, it's a Medellin thing. When you go to Bogota, for example, they have really good bread. They love their bread in Bogota. In Cali as well, when I visited Cali, they like a lot of bread there. And so it really is just a Paisa thing with arepa. They love it, it is a part of their culture, and so you will just not have bread and toast that often here in Medellin. Now the third point, I'll be honest with you, when I lived in the UK, I rarely wore sun cream, only maybe when it is the absolute height of summer and I was spending all day outside. Whereas here in Colombia, I wear sunscreen every single day, partly because of my very pale skin. I have to be careful with what I wear. And so yeah, now part of my routine is putting sun cream on my face, my neck, my arms, because again, like the chanclita point, the first few days and weeks I was here, I just wasn't wearing sun cream. I didn't really see that it was a big deal. There's usually quite a lot of clouds like you can see here in Medellin, so I didn't think the sun would be that strong, but looks can be deceiving. The sun is super strong here and you can get burnt very easily if you're a pale white person like I am. So I have had to get used to wearing sun cream every single day, factor 50 plus obviously. And actually sun cream is quite expensive in Colombia and it's difficult to find good brands which you can keep on all day. It doesn't kind of run off when you sweat and everything. So yeah, sun cream is a big part of life here, and so what I normally do is every time I go back to the UK, I stock up on sun cream, because actually healthcare products here in Colombia, as I've mentioned before on this channel, are quite expensive here. So any of you watching this and you want to spend time in Colombia, bring lots of sun cream, because you tend not to be able to get very good quality stuff here. It's also quite expensive and you will use a lot of it because you have to wear sun cream every single day. And we're not even on the coast here. It's not like I'm in Santa Marta or Cartagena where there's like sun 24/7. There's a lot of cloud cover in Medellin, but you still need to be careful as a foreigner. As a Brit who doesn't see that much sun over a typical calendar year, you have to wear sun cream every day. And I would suggest doing the whole hog and going with factor 50 plus, because you just don't want to get any chances. So the fourth point is timekeeping. So I've got to be careful with what I say here, because not every single Colombian is late for every single thing, but Colombia time is definitely a thing here. People will be half an hour late, sometimes an hour and a half late for things. If any of you watching this are guys and you've dated Latinas, especially Colombianas, you'll know that they'll casually turn up an hour late for the date. You arrange to meet at 5 p.m, they'll rock up at 6 and they'll just say sorry and then just get on with it. It's kind of normal and integrated into the culture here. And so for me, as a Brit coming from the UK, where most of the time we're normally kind of punctual for things, we take our timekeeping seriously, not as seriously as the Germans do, for example, but I would say on the whole, Brits are a lot better at keeping good time than Colombians, and so that's something that I had to adjust here. For example, you can't be too tight with your scheduling. If you have a coffee booked with a friend at, let's say, 1 p.m, you can't really book anything for 3 p.m, because the friend could turn up an hour late, then you're chatting away for 2 hours, and so you're going to be an hour late for your next thing. So you have to kind of spread out your appointments and understand that there is a high probability that your friend, either a man or a woman, is going to be half an hour to an hour late, maybe even more for your appointment. So I think part of that is cultural. It's just more of a laid back approach to life here. People live life slower. People don't run around at 100 miles an hour like they do in the UK or the US. But the other side of it is just circumstantial. For example, when it rains here in Medellin, which is quite often, most days it will rain at some stage. The traffic just grinds to a halt and it could take you double, sometimes even triple the time to get to your destination simply because it's raining and everything slows down. So it's probably 50% cultural, 50% circumstantial here in Medellin. And so yeah, if you live here, be prepared for everything to move a little bit slower. Be prepared to wait around for things. Your friends are going to be late for dates. You'll be sitting in waiting rooms for appointments for ages. And that's just part of life here, and I had to get used to that. And so the last point, unlike the UK, everything closes here on a Sunday. If you walk into downtown Medellin, or let's say the center of Envigado on a Sunday, all the shops will be closed, all the cafes, all the restaurants, they'll have their shutters closed up, and nothing really happens because for Sundays here is a day of rest. People go to the ciclovia, people go to church, people have long afternoon lunches with their families, people leave the city and go to the finquitas. Whereas in London, all the shops on Regent Street are open on a Sunday, all the shops on Oxford Street, all the restaurants, everything is open on a Sunday just as normal because this is quite a good trading time for local businesses. Whereas here in Colombia, it's the exact opposite. So if you live in Medellin and if you're planning to use your Sunday to do lots of things, to stock up on products, etc., don't leave it for another day of the week because the chances are the shop you need to go to will probably be closed. If it is still open, it will probably have massively reduced opening times, and so you're just not going to be able to get your stuff done. So Sundays here in Colombia are for walking on the ciclovia, spending time with friends. The only exception to that is the malls. The malls are still open on a Sunday with all the shops normally open, and so lots of Colombians do go to the malls on a Sunday if they need to get stuff done. But by and large, things are not open here on a Sunday, and Sunday is basically everyone's day off. So there you have it, guys. 5 things that I had to adjust to after moving to Medellin, Colombia from the UK, and I'll see you in the next video.